Let me turn to Andrea. Andrea, so good to have you here with us. You know that President Trump had falsely accused Ukraine of starting this war at earlier times. Today, talking about their bravery, which he's acknowledged before, but there was a notable difference, it seemed.
This was so different from that really operatic experience that we all saw, the drama in the Oval Office with President Zelensky, where he was shown the door without even being given the lunch that was scheduled with the president, and certainly not getting the mineral deal that had been arranged by the Treasury Secretary, without any kind of signature, and basically told, you know, the blow-up really happened when the vice president seized on the fact that Zelensky, appropriately by the rest of the world's view, said that Ukraine hadn't started the war and pushed back against that. And they seized on that in what looked like a setup, frankly, an ambush. Well, that has certainly changed. And to what caused this change, I think you saw the beginnings of it yourself when you were at NATO and you were in that news conference, and a young woman stood up and talked about the Russian
husband
attack.
Yes,
And
her
she
husband
said,
serving.
where are you from? The president said, where are you from? Ukraine. And is your husband serving? And yes. And since that time, we've seen a notable difference in impatience, a frustration by the president. He's expressed it using a term, a BS term. And notably, today he's signaled for the first time that he had indicated at some point that Putin was going to go along with ending the war. And Melania, he had never mentioned her in the context of
that was
Ukraine.
interesting, yes.
Melania, the first lady, said, oh, yes, but they bombed a nursing home. And as Courtney has just been reporting, there were 700 drone strikes on one night. Kyiv was being hammered. The battering of Ukraine in the last week or so, since the president's phone call with Vladimir Putin, the first phone call, the first of two, has been, you know, just horrendous. The most since the war began.
And the president has also kind of picked up the tempo of talking to Zelensky. And we just, colleagues here just handed me a note that Zelensky has posted on X that he spoke with the president, called it a good conversation. And he expressed that they would talk more frequently, share details about his meeting with the Secretary General. Again, clearly Zelensky is very mindful of a different way of approaching President Trump, but this also, you know, includes the big thank you here, and they hope that this can achieve peace. So this is another step in what seems to be a repair to that relationship, or at least a...
Absolutely. And Zelensky has been coached by Keir Starmer, the British Prime Minister, after that disastrous Oval Office experience, on how to, quote, handle Donald Trump. The first overture was at the Vatican when they were there for the funeral services.
That seemed like a turning point.
That seemed like that knee-to-knee, chair-to-chair meeting in the Vatican. There have been a couple of other overtures, and then on July 4th, there was a key conversation. The Financial Times has reported, and I've gotten some independent confirmation from diplomatic sources, that conversation included the President of the United States demanding that there be some changes in the Ukrainian cabinet and top leadership, including the changeover of the Ukrainian ambassador.
Now, she is one of the most prominent people that Americans know, who is a Ukrainian official serving here in the United States. Oksana has been so prominent and a very passionate advocate for her country. What do you see as happening with this if she is out of that position? Is this a normal rotation or something else?
There is a normal rotation involved, but she has been the face of the Ukrainian rallying of support. I've been at so many occasions with her. At one point, she was at a State of the Union meeting, and she is at the Kennedy Center at events. She gets standing ovations at numerous events around the country. She's traveled throughout the country. She has been a prominent advocate. She's also would be critical in the reconstruction. She's a former finance minister in the cabinet.
That's something people probably don't know.
And she's very, very experienced. And I think it will be a loss. But the backstory here is that even though she had gone to an event in Utah on a Republican congressional campaign, event. She went to one in Scranton, Pennsylvania, and Pennsylvania, as you know, is a real touch.
And that was about munitions being built in Pennsylvania.
Exactly. It was a factory visit.
Yes.
It was not political.
Yes.
But that set off the MAGA universe and the White House, and they have been campaigning against her ever since.
Well, someone who knows what it's like to be in the ambassador ranks is Bill Taylor, who served as the United States ambassador to Ukraine. Again, our audience has seen you in your many high-profile appearances before Congress and commenting on all of this. What do you make of how the president has shifted his toolkit today?
Kelly, I think it's great that the president has figured out that Putin's the problem.
Long time coming, many
Long
think.
time coming, but he's clearly made that determination. He clearly understands that Putin has been the problem. You know, the president has tried to work on this issue. He's, as you've reported, you know, in the campaign, he was talking about 24 hours. But he's put a lot of time and effort into this. And now he's finally figured out that Putin's the problem. Putin is the obstacle to a very high priority. And Trump is now taking some action to put some pressure on Putin.
I was struck today, too, by his reference, although he didn't directly call him an assassin, he referenced him as an assassin. And that seemed like much harsher language than we have typically seen. At times, I've been in the room with President Trump and President Putin where he took his word over the U.S. intelligence. So to use that kind of language, do you sense that this is a frustration that has just hit a boiling point? And do you, from your vast experience with Putin and this landscape, is he likely to change his tactics?
Putin is unlikely to change his tactics until he gets pressure. And President Trump has started that today with the economic pressure, these tariffs we've been talking about, with the weapons. And it's not just those two specific things. It's also the indication that we're going to be there we're going to support the Ukrainians for the longer term.
So there was a 50-day component to this where the president says Putin has 50 days to reach a peace deal before these secondary tariffs would go into effect. When you consider what that means in the real world calendar of the summertime and the military advantages of that time period, is that too much time?
I think it's too much time. However, the Indians and the Chinese have to worry that 100% tariffs on all of their goods, which is not out of the question since we've seen President Trump do that level of tariffs before. Yes. It gives them time, actually, to reduce their sale, their purchases of Russian oil. And that's the goal. The goal is to reduce the flow of resources, money, funds, into the Russian economy that is supporting this war.
And what are you watching in terms of what's happening on the ground politically inside Ukraine with some of the pressures about the anti-corruption movement, some of the other voices that are not in Zelensky's camp? Anything stand out to you there?
Kelly, what stands out to me is the opposition leaders, as well as the broad society, support the president. In the time of war, they're supporting him. They're not talking about elections. They're not talking about being concerned about decisions. They are supporting the president. They are united against the Russians. Let's be clear. But that shows up as support for president.
Let's dip into a piece of what the president had to say today in this consequential meeting with the NATO Secretary General Mark Rutte.
I speak to him a lot about getting this thing done. And I always hang up and say, well, that was a nice phone call. And then missiles are launched into Kiev or some other city. I don't want to say he's an assassin, but he's a tough guy. It's been proven over the years. He's fooled a lot of people. He fooled Bush. He fooled a lot of people. He fooled Clinton, Bush, Obama, Biden. He didn't fool me.
He didn't fool me. That's an interesting assessment when clearly the president had publicly said that he thought he would have real influence over Putin over the last 6 months, and that has not come to pass.
Putin has been fooling President Trump for 6 months. You're absolutely right. Putin has been, the president has said, tapping him along. The president has now realized that that's what's going on. And he's turned around. He's not going to take that any longer. He's going to put pressure on Putin.
And were you struck by the president talking about the importance of a strong Europe? Because clearly they're in the neighborhood. He has often said the U.S. is protected by an ocean. Do you see that as more support for allies there?
Absolutely. Absolutely. That's another change. President Trump's strong support for the Europeans, strong support for NATO. At the NATO summit last month, strong support for Article 5, the attack on one, attack on all. That is an indication that there's support, that NATO is united. The United States, as being a member, the main member, lead member, united with the rest of NATO. That's a strong support. And as you just reported, I think Courtney just reported, the NATO infrastructure is going to start coordinating this assistance going into Ukraine.
We often watch when the president changes in tone a little. It'll be interesting to see if this is an enduring shift on Putin and elsewhere. Thank you, Ambassador. Appreciate your time today.
We thank you for watching. And remember, stay updated on breaking news and top stories on the NBC News app or watch live on our YouTube channel.